Entombed in my mind, can't seem to break away. Lost in time, thinking about better days. Do you ever get used to the pain? 'Cause I don't know if I can do this again. Now you got me wondering why you let me die alone inside.
What's going on, guys? This is Doug Machado. Welcome back to the channel. This is an awkward position, I would say, I'm in right now, but that's because I'm underneath this E46 M3 that I'm removing the SMG transmission and components. Now, the reason why I'm removing this, it's because it's going to be a drift car and I can't drift if I don't have a clutch. It's very important to have a third pedal when you're drifting. So this E46 M3 I bought was an SMG and I'm converting to manual so I can turn it into a drift car. And right now I'm taking everything out, taking the transmission out and the motor and everything else. I'm gutting the car to prepare everything for drifting. So basically I'm building this car from the ground up. If you have an SMG E46 M3 and you want to prevent doing this, and you want to prevent from going bad, I'm gonna show you today what you could do to save your SMG if you like the SMG and if you don't want to do a manual swap, if you don't want to spend money on the car and the car performs perfectly fine for you. I'm gonna teach you how to keep the car that way, how to prevent the car from going bad, and how to prevent your SMG from breaking. Usually the SMG breaks, the actuators break for the lack of maintenance. Not one time I've had a customer saying like, hey Doug, I want to do SMG fluid flush. Yeah, that could save your SMG, and I'm gonna show you the difference. What the fluid is gonna look like on this 131,000 mile car that I guarantee the fluid was never changed before, and I'll show you what a new fluid should look like. It takes CHF11S, which is the same fluid that most Mercedes and BMWs take for their power steering fluids. And this fluid is critical. It will change its boiling point, it will carry moisture, and it's just not going to perform the same. And if these components are trying to actuate with this old fluid, it's just pretty much fighting against itself, and eventually it's going to fail because it's trying to engage a gear and the fluid is just so old that it's not performing the same as before under pressure, and it's just gonna set a cold, and eventually those motors, those actuators are just gonna burn out, because the SMG is nothing but a manual transmission, believe it or not. The only difference is that this transmission doesn't have the spring tension to keep the shifter in the middle like your car. It's perfectly center. Like if you have a manual, it's perfectly center, and if you go to the right, you feel a spring tension. If you go to the left, you feel a spring tension, and if you let it go, it's gonna go back to the middle. Now the SMG doesn't have that because the motor is what does the actuations, and he knows exactly where the shifter is, so he doesn't need that tension, that spring to keep it in the center. The spring to keep it in the center is just to make, when you're a human switching the gears, you don't know where it's at, so it has to be in the center because that's your starting point where you're gonna go to first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, or reverse, so you know where to start, and it's sitting in the middle. Now, like I say, the actuators know where the shifter is, and it doesn't actuate with the spring because it needs to be as smooth as possible. So that's why there's no spring tension in this transmission versus a manual transmission, and that is the only difference. That being said, this is a transmission that if you want to do a manual swap, you could use the same transmission. All you got to do is add those springs to the belt housing, machine the belt housing, add those springs, and you will have the same transmission as a manual. But some people don't want to go through all that trouble and spend all that money if the car is working fine. This is why I tell you, you have to flush your fluid. So let's get to removing all this. I'm probably gonna cut the pipes. I don't have time to be sitting here and, you know, unscrewing one by one. I'm just gonna cut them all out since I'm not gonna use the stuff anymore, since it's gonna be a manual. So I'm gonna drain the fluid and I'm going to compare this old fluid to a new fluid, and I'm gonna show you guys what a difference. After you see this, you're definitely gonna be contacting your mechanic or a person that you trust to work on your car, and you're gonna tell them, listen, listen, I need to flush my SMG. That will save your car. So let's get to it.
Mysterious, that's the part you always show. 'Cause you're too curious. Maybe you should take it slow.
And for those who say SMG clutch don't burn, it's a lie. They do burn. You can see here on the corner, it's all burned up. See there in the middle, it's all messed up. All messed up. So yeah, SMG clutches will burn and you do have to replace them every once in a while. All right guys, so here it is. Everything's drained. I cut all the pipes to the SMG unit and this is how it came out. Believe it or not, this was inside my SMG transmission. As you guys can see, water, right, would sit at the bottom, and this is how it was like on the very first drops that came out, meaning all that condensation was trapped at the bottom, and this is what it looks like. Filthy and thick. That oil's so thick, there's no way the SMG would be able to perform with that oil. That being said, the car did have codes for the SMG before I started taking it apart, and I guess this is the reason why. So if you don't have any codes on your transmission, do a flush now. Flush your transmission SMG fluid, hydraulic fluid, with CHF 11S, okay? And this is disgusting. There is no way a car would be able to perform with that fluid. This is how it came out. So I guess it's condensation inside the lines. You know, the weather gets hot, gets cold, so all that condensation is gonna be trapped inside the lines and inside the reservoir. And with time, you know, it's been 12 years. This car is 12 years old. 12? Whatever. It's a 2004, maybe, I don't know math. Anyways, it's old and this was never replaced. So I highly recommend you guys to replace. So now let me show you guys what a new fluid looks like. All right guys, so I'm gonna be pouring CHF 11S inside the little pan in there, just so you guys can compare the color of the two fluids and you see how it's supposed to look like. And I guarantee your car is probably not gonna be as bad, but it's definitely gonna be bad. It's definitely gonna be dirty and contaminated. So I highly recommend you to do this if your car is performing well. Here we go. So that's what new fluid should look like. Look at the difference. Huge difference, huge difference. All right guys, if you guys like, smash that thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel. Stay tuned for the next one. I'll catch you guys. Thanks for watching. Peace.
Goes my